It's such a pleasure to be joining you on this edition of the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and straight up to a big topic of discussion tonight. Will national carrier Air India ever be sold? A high-level BJP-RSS meet in Delhi today could well provide the answers for that. The meeting comes against the backdrop of RSS chief Mohan Bhagawat's warning against the proposed stake sale, especially to a foreign company. Saffron offshoots, Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh and the Swadeshi Jagran Manch are also opposed to the divestment process in the current form. Not just that, there are murmurs within the BJP itself over the sale of the Maharaja, even as opposition, that includes the Congress and TMC, have red flagged this entire issue. Ironically enough, the government's efforts to privatize Air India have not been able to generate any interest amongst potential buyers so far. Top carriers like Indigo, Jet Airways, SpiceJet and Go Air have backed off, citing stiff bid terms, while the Tatars, who were seen as the front runners, have suddenly developed cold feet as well. Just 2 days to go for the deadline to submit expressions of interest, the government is yet to get a single bid for Air India. The outcome of today's meeting will have huge ramifications for the stake sale, as it has the potential to make or break a deal. The all-important saffron brainstorm over Air India divestment is a big topic of discussion and debate right here on the India Development Debate tonight. And joining us on the show are five actually very special guests. Jitendra Bhargav, the former Executive Director of Air India, is going to join us in just a while from now. Dheeraj Mathur, Partner Aerospace and Defence at the PwC. Ashwini Mahajan, National Co-Convener, the Swadeshi Jagran Manch. We also have got two political representatives here. Hitesh Jain represents the BJP and Gaurav Vallabh from the Congress. Thank you very much, each one of you, for being with us. This is an important topic, not just because there's an RSS-BJP brainstorm that's happening on this, but this is about the national carrier Air India and its fate, really. Should Air India survive as a national carrier? Should it be sold? What is the outcome of this meeting going to be? And that perhaps will give us cues and a decision there. Mr. Mahajan, I think it's only fair that I begin with you. Mr. Bhagawat had very publicly said not too long back that Air India should be given to someone who runs it and turns it around. Is he signalling support for privatization? What is the big issue here? Or is he against foreign control? Will you help us understand what is the position of the Sangh on this? Is it against foreign control and perhaps supporting privatization?
You see, Swadeshi Jagran Manch's point of view is, we have been time and again saying it even much earlier, about the disinvestment procedures per se. You see, during earlier regimes, whenever they have been trying to disinvest the public sector undertakings of any type, whenever they were making disinvestment by strategic route, we were opposing it. The reason is that in strategic route, when you disinvest, there are issues of valuation involved, and when you say that this is the value of this particular undertaking, this is the value, but how can you really legitimize that value is important. In this case also, we are not against the disinvestment of the Air India per se, but the route which you are taking, it is the disinvestment through strategic route, inviting your expression of interest, that who can really buy this. So, that way, if you say the Air India has got a value of say 20,000 crores, and people say it is 1 lakh crores. So, how can you really legitimize that 20,000 crores? You may say that yes, our consultants have given this value, so we are doing it, but that again is subject to questions. Therefore, we have been saying, number one, this is a national carrier. It should be in Indian hands. It should not go to the foreign countries or foreign companies. This is one. Second, what should be the best way of disinvestment? There are international examples. If the time allows, I will go to that.
If I quickly ask you just a point blank question. So, you are all for privatization if the control and ownership remains Indian. Have I got your position right?
No, this is only the first step I am saying. Then again I am saying that there should not be a strategic disinvestment. By strategic disinvestment, I mean that you bring in some party that okay, now we sell this Air India to you and you run it. So, that again is not acceptable to us.
So, you want Air India to remain under government control and government ownership?
No. Again, this is that we don't want that this we really don't say that it should remain in government's hands. You see, there is an international example of the similar type. Right. In 1979.
I've just given you, time for opening remarks. Let me go across to the table and I will come back and discuss a lot of the international models right here. Hitesh Jain, I'm going to ask you a question point blank. This is the view from the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, an affiliate of the Sangh. Has the RSS view thrown a spanner in the works as far as Modi government's economic and perhaps the biggest economic gamble is concerned? Has this added to confusion?
Well, Supriya, I think we are reading too much into all these things. On the debate of Air India disinvestment is always hotly contested, and people have always debated hotly, both pro, anti, everyone has its own views. Now, political parties seek the view. If you will see the parliamentary panel also, that was also divided. Political parties have different views, and it is quite possible that different people have different views. So, merely because there has been some meeting and we are trying to get into the speculation and we are trying to read into this that they are trying to derail and all, I don't think it is fair. Because in a democracy, I believe when we speak about tolerance, when we speak about free speech, when we speak about free will, everyone is entitled to share his own views. If one wing feels that we are yes for disinvestment, yes, it should be privatized, but it should be, there should be a national player, not the international player. There are views, different people will have a different views. There are some people who will have the view that we do not agree with the disinvestment. There are some people who will say no, there should be disinvestment with a wider participation. So, I guess people have their views and one should not opine or conclude on the basis of the views expressed by anybody.
Hitesh, if it was my view or if it was somebody else's panel in the view, I can still understand. This is the view of the RSS. And I don't know how easy will it be for the BJP government to still go ahead and do it if the RSS is not on board. But that set aside, I will quickly take a question to the Congress party. And Gaurav Vallabh, there are not too many issues, and it's actually good to have both you and Mr. Mahajan here in the studios together with us. But there are not too many issues where RSS and the Congress and the opposition parties like TMC find themselves on the same side. So the government's ability to bite the political bullet, of course, will be put to test. But the reality is that you've tried in the past, and I will go back to, and I will go around to asking that question a little later, how everything has been tried. You have failed to turn around Air India, so has the BJP in the last 4 years, and now they're taking a decision to sell it. Why is the Congress party opposing it?
There are two, three reasons primarily for that. First of all, I will give you the research results with you. There is something called as input-output ratio, and Air India's input-output ratio is 1.8. Means if we are going to invest, or if there is a 1 rupee input in Air India, the output of economic activity value addition will be 1.8 rupee. That is as per the 2017 balance sheet till date. So, this is the first reason. Second reason, Supriya, like all of us sitting here, everybody is confused because RSS ideology is something else on this agenda, BJP and government is something else, and I will give you the reason for that. First thing, no domestic player is interested. We had seen that nobody had mentioned as a EOI in that. So, foreign players, there is a 49% cap, and in 49% cap the interest level will be low, and in that also he has to get green signal from Nagpur. So, there is all sort of confusion. Second point, third point, Supriya.
To you is, if there was not this confusion, is the Congress party on board as far as the Air India sale is concerned? Do you support or oppose the sale? Answer that simple question.
I mentioned categorically that 1.8 rupee is the value addition for 1 rupee of investment in Air India, and this happened only because the way we had invested in the renewal or the renovation of the Air India. Third point, Supriya, a small point, and then I will conclude. This is an election year. most probably the new government will come. Do you think that in the election year, a sincere person will come for this type of mega investment? And a small point, the major liability for Air India is the pensioners' liability. Nobody had calculated that.
Problems in the Air India sale, but the reality is that this government has shown the political will to do it. I am simply asking a question, is the Congress party going to be evasive and say there are issues, or will you oppose or support it? As simple as that. But
is more than 1.8, so we are not in support of this. That's what.
Opposed to this, you haven't been able to turn around Air India in so many years. But I get your point. I will. Okay. I will take this across to Jitendra Bhargav. And Jitendra Bhargav, the larger question that we are discussing right now is that the disconnect between the BJP and the RSS on the sale of Air India. While Arun Kumar of the RSS has said that today's meeting between the ministers and Amit Shah and of course people from the RSS is not on coordination or decision making, but only exchange of ideas. We know how those exchange of ideas happen. Can the sale of Air India go through, Mr. Bhargav, with RSS not being on board?
No, I'll be very doubtful if RSS to oppose it. BJP is very unlikely to pursue it. As it is, there are too many people opposing Air India disinvestment. My point has been right from day one, June 2017, that there was a need for building a political consensus. There was a need to brief the unions as to why disinvestment of Air India is imperative, is in their own interest. Unfortunately, government has pursued a certain course. With the result, the negatives have been highlighted. The assets have not been projected the way they should have been. We have been talking about the debt, we have been talking about the losses, but not the positives that Air India brings on the table for a potential buyer. Had they pursued it probably in a better manner, I'm sure there would have been greater interest. Now, what unfortunately is also happening is that if you look up the performance of Air India in the last 3 years, barring the last 3 months, I would say, the ATF prices have been low. The market has been growing at 20% plus. With the result, Air India has naturally reaped the benefit of the growing market, lower ATF prices. Now, that kind of a performance is being projected as if a turnaround signs are visible for Air India. Now, with the result, the unions are showing that if we can bring around a turnaround, where is the need for disinvestment? They are simply forgetting the fact that Air India, with the government ownership, cannot be revived, cannot survive. Something more drastic needs to be done. The ownership needs to be changed. Now, if you do not get onto the fundamentals of a disinvestment process, then why is it essential? I'm willing to look at it. If government says, look, Mr. Bhargav has authored a book, he studied the subject, he has worked for the airline for 20 years in senior position, interact with the organization like the RSS, Jagran Manch, etc. I'll be willing to look at it and convince them. I haven't had any kind of an employee from Air India, of any kind of political ideology in Air India, who after interaction with me has said, look, Mr. Bhargav, we still would like to oppose this investment.
Mr. Bhargav, right. Okay, Mr. Bhargav, you made an interesting point there, but Dheeraj Mathur is also here with us. And Dheeraj Mathur, I'm going to talk about the good and the bad and the negative and the positive of Air India's assets and liabilities in just a bit from now. But just want to get quick opening remarks from each one of you. Subramanian Swamy today says that there is a written evaluation which is rigged as far as Air India's worth is concerned by a foreign company, and privatization is a total scam. Are these the kind of noises that are stalling and proving to be a hurdle as far as privatization of the carrier is concerned? Perhaps a little daunting government policy there.
Well, look. So, look, I wouldn't like to comment on a statement made by any public figure. That's not for me to do so. So, all I will say is this, that look, whenever there is disinvestment of a public sector entity, we live in a democracy, a noisy and a vociferous, boisterous democracy. So, as you know, I think another panelist just pointed out, you know, people are entitled to their views and people will make their statements. And you know, part of the whole deal is to manage the environment and manage dissension and differences. So of course, there is a political risk involved in any disinvestment of a public sector entity. There are issues of dealing with labor. There are issues of dealing with the political environment, and that is a risk. And that, you know, there are operational risks, there are financial risks, there are, you know, there are hosts of risks. The political risk is also one of them, and all of these are.
I just want to keep it political for a while from now, and I think I'll come back to you. You don't want to make a political comment, I will not put you on a mat. I will come back to you in just a bit, Dheeraj Mathur.
Yeah.
But Mr. Mahajan, I want to come back to you. Yes, okay. Mr. Mahajan, I want to come back to you. Air India should stay Swadeshi is what your larger demand is. But no national carrier seems to want to buy Air India, at least not in the given conditions. Where are the Swadeshi takers for Maharaja? Indigo is interested only in its international operations and Air India Express. Jet has ruled out participation based on terms of offer. Tata Group has Air Asia and Vistara, and they say terms and conditions of divestment don't suit them. SpiceJet and Go Air, too small, have shown no interest. Where is the Swadeshi interest in Air India?
First of all, Supriya, I would like to comment on one thing. People generally say that if something is in the public sector, it cannot revive, it cannot be improved. If this point I don't agree, because you see, I don't think that the ownership of an undertaking or of a company makes it efficient or inefficient. We have examples of oil companies, Navratnas and all. So this I don't agree to. Number one. Number two, if you say Swadeshi is spoiling the party, let me tell you, we are actually making the party bigger. We are actually making it a brighter deal. When we say that. When I say that we are making it a brighter deal, you have very correctly said that there are no takers for this airlines from within India. You see, Tata is only if it gives expression of interest, it is only with the foreign airlines. And you rightly said that other entities are actually not interested and they are not capable of. Now, you see, Air India is not something which you can simply sell and get a good price. You have to run it, because the kind of assets the Air India has got. Right. Because sometimes in TV debates, some things you are really left. You see, Air India has got around 6,000, more than 6,000 air slots. These slots, you can't value them, because whenever an airlines wants to go for a new route and it wants to have a landing right at one place, it's not an easy job. So therefore, already running organization, and I must tell you, I agree with my previous panelist who said that there has been improvement, a lot of improvement in the last 4 or 5 years, especially in last 2 years. You see, if we look at the kind of improvement it is making, and if we look at the kind of assets it has got, visible, invisible, tangible, non-tangible, and it has got all potentials. And still, you know, I prefer Air India for domestic. I prefer Air India for international. Let me tell you, let me complete. So there is so much of goodwill, there is so much of brand value of Air India, which no other domestic, even today domestic carriers don't have that much of brand value all over the world. Therefore these people, those who are saying that it is a Radhi airlines, now it has got no value and nobody wants to purchase it, they can't purchase it because they can't value it and they don't have the capacity to purchase.
Okay. You make a point that people are not purchasing it, or airlines are not purchasing it because they don't see value in it and because they don't realize the value. Jiten Bhargav, and just to all my panelists, just be a little brief so I can cover a lot of points. Are these airlines actually colluding? Is Jet, is Indigo, is, are airlines in India merely posturing, merely colluding when they say that they are not interested in Air India? Because, truth be told, there are some very good things about Air India. Their energy, their enviable emerging infrastructure, or for that matter, their pilot training institutes, or the kind of, very many assets that, the routes that they have, which are the hangars that they have, extremely enviable there. Are these airlines actually colluding?
You see, I wouldn't agree on this theory that airlines are colluding, because each airline is taking their perspective from what is going to be good for them and the money that they are going to be incurring. After all, they are all accountable to the shareholders. I would say, and I would concur with Mr. Mahajan, who spoke a short while ago on certain things. A, even I'm a very strong supporter that it should be Swadeshi. Number two, that Air India has huge assets. In my opinion, there are two constraints that are coming in. A, government being an owner, and therefore they are to follow certain rules and procedures, so they cannot market the way they would ideally like to monetize it, or they can monetize it, because there will be accusations of scam, relaxing of terms and conditions. For example, after the expression of interest, some kind of requests were made that how about relaxing certain conditions, and the government came out that we cannot relax conditions. I can understand, having worked in the government sector, that you will be accused of favoring party A or party B. But the reality is that Air India is a different kind of an organization. It's a PSU, all right, but a lot of emotional connect. Government will have to do something more to it. Now, they will have no choice but to relax the conditions, because Mr. Mahajan also needs to understand that Air India, he very rightly, he did say that as a government ownership per se does not matter, it can be as efficient as anybody. Now, this is a statement which cannot be proved with facts. Oil companies are doing only as good as they are in a monopoly sector. The moment they have competition, they will see that if ONGC or Indian Oil is making X profit, a private company will make 3 times that profit. Now, that is what is unfortunately being missed. So Air India, as I said earlier, for its revival, survival, disinvestment is a necessity. And it is not the money factor that should be played out in the public domain. What the government needs to do is to say that, look, with Air India's current market share of 13% in domestic, 17% in international, it get marginalized in the next 5 years. So all our love for Air India brand name will disappear once it becomes irrelevant in the Indian market.
Okay, just hold your thoughts there, because I do want to go back to a point that was being made previously in this debate about how, enough effort has not been made to turn around Air India. And perhaps that needs to be done. Gaurav Vallabh, you had said that the Congress party is opposed to the Air India sale. Now, efforts to clean up the balance sheet have been made for years now. About 23,000 crore rupees have been injected since 2012 to bail out Air India. How much more money is going to be put in? Because you know what? I'd rather have that money be spent on education, on healthcare, and not on Air India. I mean, UPA, I remember in 2012, put in an equity infusion of 6,750 crores, 6,750 crore. Gave it a decade to turn around. Where are we? Because every trick that's conceivable has been tried, including perhaps a very botched up merger of Indian Airlines and Air India. And yet, there are no benefits that have accrued out of this.
Supriya, after the bailout, the profit after tax, or in fact I will say loss after tax, got reduced first thing. And for last 2 years, the Air India is in operational profit. If you will ignore the non-operational expenses, they are operationally generating profit. See, problem is that this scheme is so loosely crafted, there will be no sincere taker who will come. Like with Air India Express is in a big profit. They want to say one fast moving item and one slow moving item. It's a typical sick scheme, I will say. And third point, you had raised that what happened after bailout. See, after the bailouts only, the Air India's operational efficiency had gone up, and it is showing the operational profits. This year there is an operational profit for Air India that I would like to inform all our viewers. Fourth small point before you go to the next panelist. As I told you at the beginning of my discussion or deliberation with you, See, 1.8 rupee is the value addition per rupee of investment or amount invested in Air India. Why they are trying to sell? Because problem is that majority, because I had done airlines valuation quite number of times in my life, majority of amount or the price in airlines valuation is intangibles, as rightly pointed out by few of the experts, like route permits, like hangar charges, and intangible valuation, Supriya, is very objective, because there is no clear cut sign, and in any valuation you have to forecast future cash inflows and you have to calculate NPVs of those future cash inflows to find out the fair value. So that is the reason there is a lot of scope of manipulation. So intangibles you can't value, land is out of this particular scheme which was drafted by government, and as such why you want to sell something which is operationally showing the profits?
For years, we've been saying there'll be operational turnaround. There's been an operational turnaround, operationally profit. But the reality is that there's a lot of taxpayers' money that's being put in Air India. And I think to the taxpayers of this country, that is perhaps not acceptable. But before I move on to the conditions that have been put in for this sale, a very quick question to you, Mr. Mahajan, and I will request you to be a little brief here. I just want to point out something to our viewers. The average cost of Air India employee is 21 lakhs per annum. For Indigo, which is now India's largest carrier, it is 14 lakhs per annum, which is 67% of Air India employees' cost. How on earth can we justify that?
See, perhaps you please correct your notes, because in terms of revenue generation, cost of Air India's employees is 12%. Whereas that of Indigo is 11%, and in many of other airlines it is more than that. So therefore, this particular argument has got no value. Number two, you see, perhaps we are actually failing in understanding this thing, that to turn around something, you must try to look into why Air India has got into losses, and in that I would like, you see, there are so many cases going on in the law authorities, legal authorities, that why this Air India has gone into losses, and there are various cases against various people. So that those cases must be looked into. And that is very, very important, and therefore, you see, Air India is not in losses because of the merely inefficiencies. I must tell you that Air India is the only airlines in the country which has got the capacity and the infrastructure for maintenance and repair. No other airlines has got that, and therefore, if you leave Air India, to some other people, that capacity will go away. And even today, because of some elements, I don't know what is happening there is some people are saying that there is a conspiracy really to demean Air India, and you see, all these capacities are not being fully utilized. So this is very important issue. We must look into that. EASA certification has been lost, these are very big issues which we must look into.
I'm going to quickly change track and ask a question to Dheeraj Mathur before I go across to Hitesh Jain. And Hitesh, thanks for waiting patiently, because I have two back-to-back questions coming your way. But I'll quickly take a question first to Dheeraj Mathur. As somebody who is an expert as far as the sale is concerned, Dheeraj Mathur, the decision of perhaps selling Air India from an economic reform, whatever point of view, is heartening. But are the terms of sale daunting? And does the government run the risk of scaring away potential buyers by the kind of conditions that have been put in, whether it is to sell it as an entire entity, to not keep the engineering and the MRO business aside, to retain some stake for the government, to restrict foreign ownership at 49%. I mean, are these potential issues on which buyers perhaps could turn away? Are the terms of sale daunting?
I think that the government has been fairly flexible, and if you read the release of the Ministry of Civil Aviation earlier this week in response to some over 160 questions. By and large, there is the government is flexible. There are a couple of conditions which are daunting as far as potential buyers are concerned. One is the staff costs, of course, and the constraints imposed on a potential buyer in rationalizing the manpower. That is certainly something that is daunting. The quantum of debt that is being passed on is also an issue, because remember, whoever buys, and incidentally, this is a bidding process. There is a price discovery here. So it's a transparent process. So it's not as if it's a single vendor who's being given on nomination basis. So it is a transparent bidding process. Now, but whoever is going to buy is going to pay upfront for that 76%. They're going to have to invest on restructuring and turning around the airlines. And in addition to that, if they have a very large debt burden passed on to them, then we run the risk of having another debt-laden airline struggling to survive in an environment of very high taxation on jet fuel, ATF, in an industry which globally has very thin margins, so therefore the debt and the labor are two issues that are certainly daunting, and probably the government needs to have a rethink on them. A final issue that is also a matter of concern is the fact that the government is retaining 24%. Now, you know, I have always maintained that the government cannot run a service industry company simply because of certain inherent structural issues. You know, there is a process in government, there is a bidding, L1 and so on. So therefore, the government staying on 24%.
Mathur, you made your point. I'm sorry, I'm just going to skip topics now. Yes, Dheeraj Mathur, you've made an interesting point there, and those are three areas: debt, labor, and the 24% stake that the government has withheld. Hitesh Jain, two back-to-back questions to you. The first is, the expression of interest deadline was extended once, and some conditions have been eased, but perhaps not enough for potential buyers to come to, because not one bid has come in so far. Do we expect some to come in by 5 or 12 midnight or whatever the timeline is on the 31st? Is that the expectation within the government? Is the expectation perhaps realistic that the Air India sale can happen given the present conditions and the kind of issues that have been highlighted? I have specific questions on that. Hitesh Jain?
Well, I would not like to speculate, because the conditions for the bid are out. People are aware on what conditions they can bid. It will be not fair on my part to sit and give any speculative answer till 31st May. So we will have to really wait till 31st May to really get an answer. But I want to make one larger point. Like, you know, this Air India disinvestment, this question has been debated, discussed. You know, I mean, like, it's very easy for people to say, oh, it's so easy. I mean, like, you know, I mean, you just announced the Air India disinvestment as if like there are 100 takers who are ready to wait. And when the terms are put forward for disinvestment, I mean, you yourself are asking me a question that what kind of bids we are going to get till 31st May and all. So, I mean, that also proves the point that in the public discourse and the debate, it is very easy to have a headline perspective without getting into the details on the issues of disinvestment, because this I will bring in line with again with some people who made a off the cuff again remark when it comes to the banks also, that, you know, we must privatize all the public sector bank and all. So these are all complex issues, and it is better not, but since we have one 31st May is round the corner, so let's wait for 31st May, and then I think we'll get the answers by then.
Right. That's Hitesh, that's a fair point. Let's not speculate. Let's wait for the 31st of May as far as potential bids are concerned. But I will tell you where the issues are. And the issues are on 24% stake that have been held, that the government intends to hold. Because that 24% will mean 2 board seats and potential interference that one has seen from the government, not just yours, but the previous establishment as well, that bidders are scared of, because that may not give them the operational freedom, the elbow room required to run an airline. Could there be a rethink on that?
Supriya, let me wear my lawyer's hat, and we negotiate mergers and acquisition deals day in, day out. with 75%, you can easily pass the special resolution. I mean, 75 to 76, even in the private sectors are concerned, many of the people, once you cross the threshold of 75, 76 is always an acceptable position. Forget the government, even when you are dealing with someone who is running the company in the private sector, day in, day out, people are looking for minimum 75 to 76. I mean, like most of the time, I mean, like if you look at the listed company also, people are running, the promoters have the stake of 30 to 40% and still they get the operational autonomy to run the company. So I don't think 76% is clearly an hurdle. There can be an economic answer whether to participate or not to participate in the bid, but 76% certainly, I mean, when I look from both from the business side and from the legal side, I do not see 76% as a real hurdle, or like government keeping the stake of 24%. I don't think that's a big hurdle.
Okay, we'll take your word for that, given the eminent lawyer and the experience that you have in this sector. But I will still get a word in from Jitendra Bhargav. And Mr. Bhargav, the government hasn't gone the whole hog on foreign ownership and control. That's restricted to 49%. Is that enough incentive for foreign players to come in? Because why will anyone with 49% stake not want to exercise control? That I fail to understand that.
You know, we need to understand Air India is not any other PSU, as I said earlier. Government has to strike a balance rather than be accused of outright sale of Air India to vested interests. So the government in its wisdom has said, okay, 49% equity, you can take it for the foreign people, 24% equity will be retained by the government, and it's been clarified by the ministry on more than one occasion that this is basically to monetize at a later date when Air India gets listed by the private entity. It is not that the Air India government will be meddling in Air India's affairs, but having seen the past track record of government, the propensity to meddle is very much there. So all it can be overcome, one way to circumvent is that the potential company which is wanting to acquire Air India can take a binding, legally binding written document from the government that they shall not be meddling in its affairs. But we all know it very clearly that even if government holds no equity, it can really be a hurdle to a private airline when it comes to giving various decisions or sanctions, etc. So it's basically a question of perception management now. And if it can be managed, as I said earlier, government will have to be on the front foot, not take it as a distressed sale. I still maintain there are huge assets that need to be put in public domain. They need to be put on the front burner rather than the debt or the employees, etc. Government has very rightly said that after a certain phase of time, there will be a problem where you can give a VRS to an employee. And plus, as the EOI very clearly says, which needs to be understood, they're talking of a total of 11,900 employees, of which 2,000 are pilots, 3,000 are cabin crew, and 37% of the remaining people would be retiring in the next 3 years. So it is not a huge problem that's being made out.
Right.
It's a question of marketing it properly with a lot of confidence that the government must have.
Okay.
It should not be on the back foot saying, look, nobody is coming, and the media shouldn't be also creating a perception that perhaps Air India will not find any buyer. It's only a question of time and government putting the best points of Air India.
Okay, I get your point there. Fair point. Fair point. Before I go back to Mr. Mahajan and to the politicians on the show, I have a very quick question for you, Dheeraj Mathur. Is the objective for Air India sale clear? Because, you know, I agree with Mr. Mahajan and I agree with Mr. Bhargav that there are enough and more positives to talk about Air India, which I will in just a bit. But is the purpose, is the aim of the sale clear? Is it to get rid of an inefficient carrier and stop pumping in taxpayers' money, or is it to reap benefits when the turnaround and listing happens for Air India? Is the government here trying to satisfy multiple goals with the Air India sale?
Look, you know, in any economic decision, any policy decision, there are multiple goals. You know, it's very rare that that you will find that there is only just a single goal, a unitary goal. And that's not really the point. The point is that there are fundamental issues in running a service company by the government. The government has to work according to a certain governance structure. most of which is embedded in the constitution. You have to have a CAG, you have to have a bidding process, you have to have an L1. There is a particular manner in which decisions get taken in the government. There is a cabinet, the cabinet takes a decision, a cabinet notice prepared and so on. Now, all of that is intrinsic and fundamental to government ownership. A service company requires a nimbleness, the ability to take quick decisions based on evolving market conditions, and it is very difficult for the government, any government for that matter, to be able to run a service company in the face of competition. As I said, this is globally a very competitive industry. Margins are very thin, and they are, it's very capital intensive. And in India in particular, we have this issue of the high rates of taxation. So therefore, it is essential, and everybody has a general consensus on the point that Air India is a great asset. There are a lot of pluses with Air India, but there are intrinsic and contradictions or problems in the government running it. So the issue is not that Air India is bad, or we're trying to get rid of a bleeding asset. Yes. Of course, it's a bleeding asset, but it's not a question of that. It's a question, does it make economic sense? Is there a business case to run?
All right, Dheeraj Mathur, you make an important point there. I get your point, you make an important point there, but I will ask the same question. Okay, I get that, Dheeraj Mathur, but I'm going to ask the same question to Hitesh Jain, considering he represents the ruling party here. And Hitesh, what is the objective of trying to sell Air India? Is it to perhaps, cut your losses by shutting down an inefficient carrier, stopping to put money, good money, bad money behind good money? Or is it to make hay when they're listing and the turnaround happens, which is why that stake is being withheld at 24%? I mean, what is the purpose? Because the government seems to be solving a lot of purposes with this one sale.
Well, if you will look at the terms and condition, you asked me why 76-24. The answer lies in that. The answer lies by giving 76% control. You are trying to get a responsible person who's going. We want someone who's going to run the carrier properly and who's going to run Air India successfully, because Air India has a lot of pluses, and if a proper investor comes, he can really turn it around. The 24% answer lies that the government is also trying to protect the upside, that in the event when the company will be turned around, the government's upside is protected. So you ensure two things: you ensure the money coming into the system, you ensure you protect the upside, and you ensure the Air India is also run. And you have to also look at this with the reforms in the aviation sector, whether it will be Udan policy, whether it will be ensuring that the airports are made operational, giving nods. For example, in Bombay also, after so many years, we are talking about the second airport where the work has really started. So one has to look at the initiative not just from the disinvestment of Air India, but the reforms of the government for the aviation in the aviation sector as a overhaul. And that is the reason you are seeing in the last 2-3 years record numbers of passengers are the capacities are increasing. The airports are the demand. I mean, the airports are outgrowing. People are talking about the next generation airports to come over.
Hitesh,
and ensure
I get your
that
point.
The traffic, it can handle the traffic.
Okay, Hitesh, I get your point there, but I'm going to go back to the moot question on which we started this debate, that why sell Air India, why is the government looking at privatizing Air India or selling it? And Mr. Mahajan, I'll come back to you, because post-economic liberalization and deregulation of routes, hasn't Air India outlived its purposes? The reason why these national carriers and everything came into being was because the state needed to play that role when we had just got independent. Today, that's not required. Does it make sense for the government to be in aviation at all? Because the world perhaps has moved on from the high commanding days of a national carrier, a national telecom firm, a national steel firm. I mean, has Air India outlived its purpose of being?
You see, I go back to from where I started in the beginning. I simply said that we are for the privatization, but the methodology which is being adopted, we are not agreeing to that. This is one. Therefore, the question of Air India being run by the government, we are not making that. We are not making that assertion. When I said that we don't really agree with this point that ownership of a company makes it efficient or inefficient. That is the only point I made, but we are not against the disinvestment or privatization per se. Now, the question is how we can do it. In the very beginning I told you that there are international examples. In the same situation, British Airways was in 1979. CEO of British Airways took this challenge of turnaround, and by 87, by 85, 86 that British Air was turned around, and in 87 the same was offered for a public IPO. IPO was made and British Airways share was oversubscribed by 11 times. Therefore, the very question that government cannot run a service industry and cannot turn around it, I do not agree with it. Now, what I am saying is that we are not for keeping Air India with the government for all the times. Firstly, you have to turn it around. I have already mentioned the kind of assets, the kind of tangible, intangible, visible, non-visible assets. Apart from that, if you look at the kind of revenue generation, inflows of funds and so on, you see, when you are making this disinvestment plan, what you are doing? You have kept 4 companies, you have kept all debts, 30,000 crores of rupees of debt, and also the non-core assets aside, making it a special purpose vehicle. Now, let me complete. So when you are doing it, my suggestion is keeping 10,000 crores of rupees of debt also along with that 30,000 crores and make it a viable asset, viable company, and then run it efficiently, and this can be done. What I am saying is we need not keep all the ownership of Air India with us. We can always issue shares and put it on the share market and sell it off.
That you've had in mind, and I'm glad you're sharing this, but just to take a cue from what you said, and Gaurav Vallabh, coming to you, because you also oppose the kind of sale that's going to happen for Air India or the government looking to do this. Look at the world around us. British Airways is seen as a UK's flag carrier, but it was actually privatized via an IPO in 1987. Lufthansa, seen as the symbol of Germany, privatized via the IPO route in 1990s. KLM was fully privatized in 1998. Indeed, Swiss and Austrian are owned by Lufthansa. The US, which owns the world's most valuable airline, that's the Southwest, worth $33 billion, was never a government-owned airline. 2010 bankruptcy, Japan Airlines was once again privatized in 2011. It was originally privatized in 1987. Korean Air was privatized in 69. Australia's Qantas was sold in 1995. So clearly, we see a whole host of countries with flagship airlines that don't have to be government controlled or government owned.
See, I don't want to give you a rebuttal to this, but one of the fastest growing airline, the Emirates and Etihad, doesn't fall into this category. But what I mean to convey, Supriya, is that we are not against this scheme because of reasons pointed out by me earlier, and now I am adding 2 more points. See, you had pointed out a point that why the Air India's cost per employee is one of the highest in India. The reason is the post-retirement benefits, and the way 2013 the 11,000 out of 37% employees are going to retire in 11,000 plus pool. the post-retirement cost is very high as far as Air India is concerned. Second point I want to put on the table is that the way in the last 3-4 years the agreements with the aircraft sellers has been done, they are not, as far as the international terms are concerned, they are not very foolproof. So, these are the few issues which I want to point out, and as I pointed earlier also, that why you want to sell. The airlines had shown after our plan in 2012, when we had invested some money, 23,000 crore, you had precisely pointed out, the airlines is showing the results. The operational profit is coming, it is just after a few years the part will also come. Only thing is that they have to survive in the competition. The market share is consistently deteriorating under the current regime. When we left, it was 17%, currently it is 12%. So, they have to make it more competitive, put some more energy into the national carrier, and we can find out how to invest, how to generate the new capital for that. And a last point, the 76-24 you had discussed, but why we are not discussing 49-51? Because 76-24 no domestic player had shown the interest. So, why major discussion should be on 49-51, and as per me no serious foreign player will come with 49% equity.
Exactly 2 minutes left on the show, and I will request the next two speakers to be extremely brief. Jiten Bhargav, will it be realistically possible to sell Air India in an election year, given that there will be some layoffs that this entire process is going to entail?
Supriya, it's unfortunate that even experts on your panel are giving misleading statements and vitiating the environment in a negative way. To say that the retired employees of Air India will cost a lot, etc. No, Air India does not have a pension scheme. There is no liability being passed on to acquiring company. The real reason of the need for disinvesting Air India is the threat of extinction. If we do not disinvest Air India and the government does not assure of putting money on a regular basis every year after year to help it expand fleet, with 900 aircraft already on order by the private airlines, they get inducted. Air India's market share is not gone down because of the UP or NDA from 17 to 13%, as was being alluded. It is simply because Air India is adding capacity at a certain rate and the private airlines are adding capacity at 3 times that rate. So Air India's market share will become 5%, 7% in the next 5 years, leading to irrelevance, leading to oblivion. So the only chance of disinvesting Air India is now. You cannot revive the process 2 years from now. That's a very unfortunate.
That's a very clarion call.
Experts on the panel do not know the full story of Air
Mr.
India.
Bhargav, that's a very clarion call that you're making, but I'm sorry, I'll have to button there because I've got just no time on the show left. Sitesh Jain, a very quick last word to you. Will the sale of Air India be the big test or the big litmus test as far as the Modi government's reform credentials are concerned?
I will answer in one line. Our motto, Saaf Niyat and Sahi Vikas. That is how we will be following, and we will be looking the Air India disinvestment from that basis. But I must thank Mr. Bhargav for pointing out how Congress is hypocrite and they spread the lies. Thank you, Mr. Bhargav, to mention about how airlines are increasing by doubling the capacity, and it is not the government that is responsible.
Are you not going to pay gratuity? Are you not going to pay gratuity? I am asking you. Are you not going to pay gratuity? Why the share had reduced?
If you have been exposed now, it is enough. You have been exposed.
Are you not going to pay gratuity?
You have been exposed for spreading lies.
Okay, I am exposed. But are you not going to pay gratuity? You mentioned that pension is not going to be paid. I am saying post-retirement, there is a huge cost liability, which you are not appreciating. 37% you yourself is saying people are retiring. Are you not going to pay gratuity?
Mr. Jain and Mr. Bhargav. All right. 1 second. The Air India sale is actually the sale of just a carrier, but look how emotive the issue is, because this is not just another carrier, this is Air India, the national carrier which has many emotional values attached to it, a great brand, but perhaps not the most efficient operations. The time for sale, like our experts say, is now. There will be political slugfest on this, but the question that we will go back to asking is, Can the Air India sale go through without the RSS being on board? And is this the biggest test of the Modi reform credentials? With that, it's a wrap here on the India Development Debate tonight. I can't thank my wonderful panel enough for joining us this evening. Mr. Mahajan, Mr. Vallabh, Mr. Hitesh Jain, Mr. Jiten Bhargav, and of course Mr. Dheeraj Mathur. Thanks very much for sparing time and being with us on the India Development Debate tonight.